Morning. Today I'm going to tell you about someone that was even more important to Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier in baseball, even more so than my personal hero, Pee Wee Reese. Y'all ready? Let's do this. I'm in the tiny cemetery here by the Pisgah Presbyterian Church in Pisgah, Kentucky. That may not be the way the locals say it, I'm not sure. But based on my research online, Pisgah, the name comes from Mount Pisgah, which was spoken of in the Hebrew Bible. It's a very old settlement here. There's a lot of history, some really old graves. But we're here to see one specific fella, and that would be Happy Chandler. I'm going to tell you a bit about Happy when we get down there to where his stone is at, which is roughly down there. This is the Pisgah Presbyterian Church. I'll show you the front and stuff on the way back out. I believe I found between that section and this section, I found a lot of the settlers that would have created this little community. I believe the individuals that settled here were Virginians, but a lot of these date back to the early to late 1800s. This town here, this little community here, was established in 1784. Good morning to you too, crows. So this little community, 1784 is when it was established. Kentucky wasn't a state until 1792, to give you a bit of an idea of what I'm talking about there. It's a beautiful cemetery. It's not huge. It's not huge by any means, but it is beautiful. I believe from my research, that this cemetery sits on about 30 acres. Now that's including the little park over here and the church and all that. So as you can see, the fence lines are back there. And that's about the extent of how far it goes there in reference to, there's the front, and then there's the church once again. So here is who we're looking for. Albert Benjamin Happy Chandler Sr. Happy was born July 14th, 1898, and he left us June 15th, 1991. As you can see, a little preview here. Happy served Kentucky as a state senator, lieutenant governor, governor, U.S. senator, governor again. He served Major League Baseball as its second commissioner, which is a big part of why we're here. And he was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame by the Veterans Committee in 1987. Chandler attended Transylvania University, which is in Lexington. We're technically just across the county line in Woodford County, so this would be considered Versailles. Happy, while there, was the captain of the basketball and baseball team, and he was also the quarterback. He was a very well-respected, obviously tremendous athlete, and his jovial demeanor on campus, that's what gave him the nickname of Happy. While at Transylvania, the Army opened an office there to recruit during the war. Happy signed up. Happy trained to be an officer, and thankfully for the rest of the story here, he did serve his time, but before he could be deployed, the war was over. That's a very important fact. Had that not happened, who knows what the world would be like. After that, Happy figured, well, my best bet is to go back to Transylvania, get my degree. So that's what he did. He continued to play baseball. There were quite a few, I would call them semi-pro teams around here. There were a couple different leagues that we'll talk about in future videos. But anyway, Happy graduated from Transylvania, and he decided he wanted to go to Harvard Law School. So, Happy loaded everything up, went to Harvard, got there, and unfortunately for him, he couldn't afford to stay there. So, common sense told him, well, there's a law school at the University of Kentucky. That's my home. So, he came back home, and he graduated with a law degree from the University of Kentucky. Soon after, Happy's political career really took off. And before you knew it, he was elected to the Kentucky Senate. Soon after, he was chosen to be the lieutenant governor under Governor Ruby LaFoon. LaFoon and Happy eventually figured out that they had some very different ideas, and they were at odds with each other well before Happy's tenure was over. Governor LaFoon was adamant that he was going to implement a state sales tax. It didn't sit well with Happy. Chandler fought tooth and nail against him. LaFoon used his political muscle, and he stripped a lot of the statutory powers that Happy would have. But Happy wasn't done. After that, Chandler saw the writing on the wall, and he knew, that LaFoon would handpick another candidate to run for governor. He would preside over that by wanting to use a nominating convention over a primary election. And this part right here, this is where the brilliance of Happy shows up well. Governor LaFoon made a trip to visit FDR, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Per the Kentucky Constitution, as soon as LaFoon crossed the state line, the acting governor was Happy. So what Happy did, knowing that he would want him, or knowing that LaFoon would want to use a convention rather than a primary race, he called legislation in session, and he asked everyone to consider a rule stating that the primaries would be done and nominating conventions are not the norm. They shouldn't be the norm because it's too easy to manipulate, right? So LaFoon got back, and as you can imagine, he was pretty furious. He did take to the Court of Appeals, but per the Kentucky Constitution, the bill that he had just gotten passed, I don't think I said it had gotten passed, the bill that had gotten passed was validated. So that was a battle that Happy won, and it would set the table for the next election. That's right. The election came, Chandler won. He became governor of Kentucky for the first time in 1935 at the tender age of 37. That's young. That's really, really young. Wow. While Chandler's political career was obviously impressive, he was governor twice, Kentucky senator, a U.S. senator. But if I'm honest, that's enough about politics because I hate politics. I just wanted to share that little example of the brilliance of Happy Chandler and how it kind of foreshadows some of the moves that he's able to make later on. Because I want to focus on the time that Happy Chandler was the second commissioner of Major League Baseball. And I'll touch briefly on something that he took with him from being the governor, and that was setting up a pension fund for baseball players. It's been said that Happy saw Babe Ruth towards the end of his life, penniless, an alcoholic, and he didn't feel that was right. That man gave his all for everyone's enjoyment, and so that was the spark that had Happy create the pension fund. Now, how he did that was he sold the broadcasting rights to the World Series. He took that money and he funded the pension fund, which is still in place today. I believe 10 seasons in Major League Baseball is how you're eligible. But with signing bonuses and stuff of that nature, a lot of kids are millionaires by the time they ever get to the majors. But let's get to the real meat and potatoes of this video. Random baseball fact for you. I bet you don't know this. And if you don't, click that subscribe button. All right. Baseball commissioner Bart Giamatti banned Pete Rose from baseball. He banned him from the Hall of Fame. Pete finally admitted it. I think bygones should be bygones. But I told you that to tell you this. Bart Giamatti's son is Paul Giamatti. Don't know the name? Bet you know the face. Yeah, he's been in hundreds of movies. So I just thought that was an interesting fact. Pretty cool. Click subscribe. I know you didn't know that. Recently, we visited the grave of my baseball hero, Pee Wee Reese. I'll link that video here somewhere. And I talked in that video how Pee Wee's camaraderie, friendship, just being a wonderful human being, helped ease Jackie Robinson's path as he broke the color barrier in baseball. Now, I would argue Happy Chandler was more important than any Dodgers teammates. And I'm going to tell you why. As commissioner, there was a vote that was held by the 16 teams at that time about allowing integration of black players into the major leagues. That vote went 15-1 no. That didn't sit well with Happy, but that's something he had to deal with, so he thought. So he comes back home and he gets a call from Brooklyn Dodgers owner Branch Rickey.
So Ricky called me on the telephone as soon as I got home and said, "I've got to see you." And I said, "All right, come on." Came down here. I told him, I said, "I've thought about this thing many times. I was on the Senate Military Affairs Committee all during the Second World War and had opportunity to observe the character and conduct of American soldiers all over the world. I saw black men and white men and red men and yellow men and all kinds of colors. I wasn't present when the Lord gave out the colors, and I don't know why, but that's the way it is. They're colored. And they were offered to fight and die for the freedom of mankind. And I just can't believe that when a fellow offers his life for the freedom of mankind, when he comes back home, he's told he can't play the national pastime, national sport. And I said, I think this thing ought to be ended. And you bring him in, and I'll approve of the transfer of his contract from Montreal to Brooklyn, and we'll make the fight.
Huge moment in history right there. Branch Rickey, outside of Jackie Robinson, is probably the most important figure when it comes to breaking the color barrier. What he had done was he had found a player that he knew would be great, and he knew his temperament, and he knew Jackie Robinson was up to the task. It was shocking to a lot of people, including the other 15 owners. When they asked Happy to be commissioner, they thought he was a yes man, right? Yeah, come on in. You're going to do what we say. Come on. But they didn't realize, as governor, he had instituted pensions. And he had integrated a lot of Kentucky government. And so he took those skills from being the governor to baseball. And in my opinion, made the world a better place. It's pretty awesome. I do find it very interesting and intriguing that two of the three more important characters, not known as Jackie Robinson, played such a huge role in integrating baseball. And I think, my personal opinion, this was in the late 40s, early 50s. I think it's a perfect snapshot of actually who Kentucky folks are. I've said it a million times. It's not bourbon. It's not basketball. It's not bluegrass. It's not horses. It's the people that make our Commonwealth great. Unfortunately, this next bit I want to tell you about should have never happened. I try to be honest in everything that I do. So this next part is something I wish I didn't have to tell you about. But later in life, in 1988, so at 90 years old, Happy used a very derogatory statement, racist statement, about some folks in Africa. You can figure that one out. I do feel that the good deeds he did with race relations in our government as well as baseball probably buys him a benefit of the doubt, as his personal aide said that he grew up in a small town and there were 400 whites, 400 blacks. They used that term and they weren't offended. That is not a get out of jail free card. But I think I would rather believe the integration, the betterment of everyone, outweighs a 90-year-old man who's saying something silly. Probably just a slip. Doesn't excuse it. Should have never happened. But I wouldn't feel that I did my job for you had I not told you about that. I'm going to leave you with the tradition of Happy Chandler singing My Old Kentucky Home at the UK basketball games, which he often did, as well as the football games. And I've said before, it's hard to call people heroes because even the mightiest have fallen. And I think this is a good example of that. But again, small benefit of the doubt, I think we have to give it to Happy. He did an awful lot of good for a 5-second slip up. I hate that it happened, but it did. So I feel I did my job by informing you of that, as painful as it was to say.